My girlfriend left with her ex-boyfriend because he is the love of her life and even demanded me. You must keep paying for my car and our rent while they were together. My name is Lucas. I'm 29 years old, and I'm currently the owner of a fast food restaurant. It is not a luxury place or anything like it, but I'm proud of what I have built. I started from the bottom, working long hours in other people's kitchens, saving every coin, and after much sacrifice, I managed to open my own business. Over time, the restaurant began to grow, I gained regular customers, and somehow, I became known in the area. I can say that I live off what I love. Thanks to that, I was able to buy a car, and, with effort, I also managed to have my own house. It is not a mansion, but it is comfortable, cozy, and enough for me. I have never been a person of luxuries, just a hard-working person who feels satisfied when he sees his goals are met with constancy and discipline. It was in that context, when things were on the rise, that I met Maria. She was 25 years old at the time, and I was at a stage where I was not looking for a formal relationship, but life surprised me. I remember perfectly the first day she entered the restaurant. It was a Friday afternoon, one of those days when customers do not stop coming in. I was at the cash register helping because we were short on staff, and then she arrived. She ordered with a shy smile, but there was something in her eyes that caught my attention. She asked me if the place was mine, and when I told her it was, she was surprised. She congratulated me on the business, and we ended up talking for a bit. It was not long before we started going out. At first, everything was excitement, novelty, those butterflies in the stomach that make any sacrifice worthwhile. Maria was affectionate, attentive, and always made me feel special. Little by little, we became more formal, and, after a few months, we were a couple. However, over time I began to notice that she had a very particular character. She was a jealous and unstable person. If she saw me talking to a female customer, even if it was just to serve her, she would get upset. If someone left a comment on my social media, she wanted to know who it was and why they were talking to me. At the beginning, I took it as a sign of interest, as if her jealousy were a reflection of how much she cared about our relationship. I was blinded by love, and instead of setting boundaries, I decided to endure it. Over time, these attitudes became more frequent. Sometimes we would argue over insignificant things. She could go from being fine to getting angry for no apparent reason. There were days when she told me I was everything to her, and others when she seemed to doubt everything. I justified her mood swings by saying that maybe she had insecurities or that she had had difficult experiences in the past. My mistake was to believe that love was enough to fix everything. The truth is that I was in love. I believed our relationship had a future, that we could overcome any obstacle. I thought about marrying her someday, about starting a family. I always included her in my plans, and I was convinced that she felt the same way. Everything changed a few months ago. I noticed that Maria was different. She was more distant, distracted, as if her mind were somewhere else. When I asked her if something was wrong, she would say she was tired or that she had personal worries. I tried not to pressure her, but the truth is that this coldness started to affect me. The arguments became more frequent, and the uncomfortable silences became part of our daily life. I'm not a distrustful person by nature, but something inside me began to suspect. I did not know how to explain it, but I had the feeling that there was something she was not telling me. One day, while she was in the bathroom, her cell phone vibrated on the table. I do not usually check anyone's things, but at that moment the screen lit up and a notification appeared from a number I did not have registered. The message said something like, "See you tomorrow. I cannot stop thinking about you." I felt a blow to my stomach. My first reaction was to think that there must be some mistake, that maybe it was a friend who was joking, but my intuition told me otherwise. I did not do anything at that moment. I kept quiet and waited to see if she would say something. The next day, I woke up earlier than usual. I decided to follow her without her noticing. I'm not proud of having done it, but I needed answers. She said she was going to visit a friend, but instead I saw her enter a cafe. I parked my car at a certain distance and stayed watching. A few minutes later, a man appeared. I did not recognize him at first, but then I remembered that she had told me about her ex. It was him. They greeted each other with too much familiarity. They hugged and stayed talking as if they were a couple. In that instant, I felt my whole world collapse. I had hoped I was wrong, but the scene before my eyes confirmed what I feared most. Maria was cheating on me. I did not approach. I did not make a scene. I just stood there watching in silence, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and disappointment. After a few minutes I left because I did not have the strength to stay or to confront her at that moment. That same night, when she returned home, I decided to talk to her. I sat in front of her and told her directly that I knew what was happening. At first she tried to deny it, but when she saw that I was sure, she looked down. What she told me next left me even more devastated. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that yes, she had been seeing her ex. And not only that, she told me that he was the true love of her life, that although she cared for me, she had never stopped loving him. Hearing those words was like receiving a stab in the heart. Until that day, I thought our relationship had a future, that our problems could be overcome. But suddenly I was faced with a reality I could not change. I had been a replacement, a kind of temporary refuge while she remained emotionally attached to someone else. I did not know what to answer at that moment. I just looked at her in silence while trying to hold back my tears. She asked me to understand her, that she had not planned it, that she had simply started to feel things again that she had never left behind. I felt devastated. Everything I had built with her in 3 years was crumbling in the cruelest way. And that is when I understood something painful, but necessary. Love is not enough when there is no sincerity or respect. However, what came next was even worse. To give a little context, in our relationship, I was always the one who took care of the big expenses. I do not regret having been generous because that is my way of showing affection. But over time I realized that Maria got used to depending on me for absolutely everything. I paid for the utilities, the small trips we took from time to time, and even the debts she had before she was with me. One of those debts was the loan for the car she drove. When we became a couple, she told me that she had taken out that car on installments, but that she was having difficulty paying for it. At that time, my restaurant was already in a good stage and I thought, it is no problem, I can help her. I started to take care of the monthly payments. In my head, it was a gesture of support for my partner, an act of love. I never imagined that later it would become a weapon against me. A few weeks after our breakup, I was at the restaurant reviewing accounts when my cell phone rang. I saw that it was her. I hesitated to answer, but I thought that maybe she wanted to close some pending issue or pick up her things. I answered with a dry voice, without any desire to prolong the conversation. "Hello, Lucas," she said with a tone as if nothing had happened. "What do you want, Maria?" I answered. "I was just calling to tell you that I was notified that you still have not paid the car's monthly payment. You must do it soon, because otherwise, interest will accumulate." I was silent for a few seconds, incredulous. "Are you kidding, right?" I finally said with a nervous laugh. "No, I'm serious. You know that you have always made that payment." That is when my blood boiled. "Listen to me well, Maria. You and I are nothing anymore. You deceived yourself and you deceived me, and you had the nerve to tell me that your ex is the love of your life. I have no reason to keep paying your debts. That car is yours, not mine. Figure it out yourself." There was an awkward silence, and then I hung up. I thought that would be it, but I was wrong. Over the following days, she began to harass me with calls and messages. She said that I had to act like a man, and that I could not back out of a commitment I had already made. I would block her, and she would find a way to write to me from another number. I ignored everything I could, but the situation became more grotesque when her ex, the same guy she cheated on me with, started calling me too. The first time I saw his unknown number, I did not answer, but then he insisted so much that I finally answered to end it once and for all. "Are you Lucas?" he said with a mocking voice. "Yes. Who is this?" "I'm Daniel, Maria's partner." I could not believe it. This parasite who still lived with his parents, who had never done anything for her, now had the nerve to call me. "And what the hell do you want?" I replied, "Look, I do not want any trouble. I just want you to understand that it is only fair that you continue to support Maria. She gave you 3 years of her life, 3 years of her youth that she will not get back. The least you can do is pay her what she is owed." I was frozen. "Excuse me," I said, incredulous. "Yes, you heard me right. She deserves for you to cover at least a year of rent and the pending car expenses. It is nothing to you. You have a restaurant that makes you good money." At that moment I exploded. "Look, you imbecile. What I did in those 3 years was give her absolutely everything. Stability, support, a roof over her head, and even pay her debts. Do not come to me saying I owe her something, because in reality, she is the one who failed me. I'm not going to give her another cent." He tried to interrupt me, but I did not let him. Do you know what the problem is with you, Daniel? You are a freeloader, a parasite who still depends on his parents and has never worked for what he has. You have the nerve to demand that I continue to support her when you, who are now her great love, cannot even buy her a coffee. Why do you not take care of her car and her rent yourself? There was a silence. I was already beside myself. Learn to earn things with your own sweat, you underscore freeloaders. I told him before hanging up. That was the end of the call, but not of the harassment. Maria insisted again in the following days. Messages like, Lucas, be reasonable. Do not leave me alone in this. Or, if you really ever loved me, keep your word and pay what is left. But I was already convinced that the time had come to set a definitive limit. It was not just about the money, but about respect. I had given too much in that relationship. I provided her with opportunities she had never had on her own, and, instead of valuing that, she betrayed me with someone who was clearly not at her level in any aspect. And the worst part was that, far from feeling ashamed, she expected me to continue being her savior while she shared her bed with that guy. That situation opened my eyes in a brutal way. I understood that sometimes people not only take advantage of your love, but also of your generosity. And when you do not set limits, you end up becoming a kind of emotional and financial automatic teller machine. With every message that arrived on my cell phone, with every attempt at manipulation, my determination grew stronger. I was not going to pay anything else. The car was her problem, the rent was her problem, and her new life with her love of her life was also her problem. I'm not perfect, but I'm clear that what I have achieved in my life has been through effort. Nobody gave me anything, and much less did someone come to solve my debts. If she wanted to stay with her ex, perfect, but she should also stay with her responsibilities. And so I decided to cut off all contact. I blocked her from everywhere, even from unknown numbers. I also asked my restaurant employees not to let her in if she ever showed up there. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because I needed to protect my peace of mind and the business that I built with so much sacrifice. The first few days were difficult. I'm not going to deny it. I felt angry, sad, and at the same time, a sense of emptiness. I had invested years of my life in someone who in the end only used me. But over time I began to see things more clearly, and, although it still hurts, I know I made the right decision. Not to put another cent into the life of someone who betrayed me and did not even have the decency to leave with dignity. Update. After everything that happened, I thought I had already closed this chapter of my life. I blocked her from everywhere, set a clear boundary, and focused on moving forward. I thought that would be enough, but I was wrong. A couple of quiet weeks went by until one day my cell phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but out of habit, I did. To my surprise, it was Maria. Lucas, please, do not hang up, she said between sobs. I was already fed up from the start. What do you want now? I replied coldly. Please, at least help me with the car. I do not want the debt to grow anymore. If we do not pay this month, they are going to charge me interest, and I have no way to do it. I just need you to give me some money. I was silent for a few seconds. I was surprised at how she still had the nerve to ask me for money after everything that had happened. Maria, I already told you. That car is yours, not mine. It is your responsibility. I'm not going to pay anything. She started to cry harder. Lucas, understand me. I promised Daniel that you would cover everything. I told him not to worry because you had always been there. I assured him that we would not lack anything because you have money, because you are rich. Hearing that made my blood boil. Rich? I replied, almost laughing with sarcasm. Do you think that because I have a restaurant I'm a millionaire? Do you know how many hours I work a day for this to work? I'm not rich, Maria. What I have earned with sweat, not with cheap promises. If you really want to get out of your debts, get a job. At that moment, I heard a strange noise, and suddenly another voice took the phone. Look, you lowlife. It was Daniel with a threatening tone. If you do not want anything to happen to your little hamburger stand, you better cooperate. I felt a chill down my spine, but I immediately became incensed. Are you threatening me, you parasite? Listen to me well. If you touch my restaurant, you are going straight to jail. I'm not afraid of you or anyone else. You want money? Get a job like any decent person, because you will not see a single cent from me. And I hung up abruptly. After a few minutes, my cell phone rang again, but I did not answer. A while later, I received an audio message from Maria. Please, Lucas, she said crying, help me. I cannot do this alone. It is a lot of money, and if you do not give me something, Daniel is going to leave me and I will be left with no one to support me. I could not help but laugh with irony. She was really admitting that the only thing she was worried about was that guy leaving her, that her whole plan revolved around living off someone, whether it was me or him. I decided to reply with sarcasm. I opened my gallery, looked for a video I had saved a long time ago, the famous meme of Mr. Krabs playing the world's smallest violin. I sent it by message along with a text that said, "This is the official anthem of your situation. Good luck with your great love and your debts." After sending it, I felt relieved, as if I had given it the closure it needed. However, deep down I knew I could not just leave it at mockery. Daniel had made a direct threat against my restaurant, and that was no longer a game. The next day, I went to talk to my lawyer. I told him everything, from the calls to the audio and the explicit threat. I showed him the call logs, screenshots, and the audio of Maria crying. My lawyer was clear. What they were doing was extortion, and I could report it. In addition, the threats against my business were a serious matter. I did not think twice. I filed a formal complaint and requested protective measures. At the same time, I hired private security for the restaurant. I installed additional cameras, reinforced the entrances, and explained the situation to my employees so they would be vigilant. I did not want to take any risks, neither for myself nor for the people who work with me. The ironic thing about all this is that while I was doing everything possible to protect what I had built with so much effort, they were probably still thinking about how to get money from me. And I say this because days later I received a message from another unknown number. It was an absurd blackmail attempt, clearly written by Daniel, saying, "You still have time to do the right thing and support Maria. If you do not, you will face the consequences." That was the final proof I took to my lawyer. With each attempt at manipulation, they were sinking themselves deeper. On a personal level, I'm not going to deny that it affected me. It is not easy to accept that the person you trusted turned out to be capable of betraying you and then trying to take advantage of you even after breaking up. What impacted me the most was not the infidelity itself, although it hurts, but the mentality of dependence and abuse. The fact that someone thinks they deserve for another to carry their debts just because they shared time together is something I still cannot fully comprehend. The thing with Daniel, on the other hand, only confirmed what I already knew. A man without ambition, without a job, without dignity, willing to live off whoever he can. It made me angry, yes, but I also felt pity. How can someone feel comfortable asking another man for money to support his partner? It is the height of mediocrity. Today I can say that I'm not afraid. I'm legally protected and with extra security. If they try anything, they will have to face the consequences. But beyond that, I feel stronger than ever. That relationship taught me that setting boundaries is not being selfish, it is being fair to yourself. I learned not to confuse love with obligation, and I understood that helping is fine as long as the other person also does their part. What I experienced with Maria and Daniel was a bitter experience, but necessary to open my eyes. Sometimes I think about the contrast. While I spend my days working, planning how to grow my restaurant, they are probably still looking for someone to get money from. And although at some point that made me angry, now it brings me relief. I keep moving forward, they remain stagnant. The love of her life turned out to be a man who cannot even pay for his own coffee, and she, instead of recognizing it, still had the nerve to ask me to support her. That is the difference between someone who builds and someone who destroys. Today I continue with my life. My restaurant is stronger than ever, with new security measures and with customers who support me. And I, on a personal level, am learning to enjoy my single life and my independence. Maria and Daniel, I do not know what will become of them. Maybe they are still together, maybe not. But what I'm sure of is that they will not see another cent of mine. And if I can give any advice to anyone who reads this, it is the following. Never allow someone to manipulate you with love or guilt to take advantage of you. True love does not demand that you pay someone else's debts, nor that you sacrifice your dignity to support someone who does not lift a finger. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful to have done it now and not later, when the price would have been even higher. Update. As I mentioned before, I had taken legal action against Maria and Daniel. The complaint was filed, security at my restaurant was reinforced, and I was trying to move on with my life. Still, There was always that discomfort in the air of not knowing if he would really carry out his threats. Well, that doubt was resolved one night I will never forget. It was a Thursday after midnight. The restaurant was already closed, but as always there was a night watchman on duty. I was at home resting after an exhausting day when suddenly my phone rang. It was the watchman, speaking nervously and with a quavering voice. "Mr. Lucas, they just caught a man trying to spray paint the walls of the restaurant." I jumped out of bed. "What? Are you sure?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes, I saw him with my own eyes. He was about to stain the entire facade when I surprised him. I yelled at him to stop, and he ran away. I called the police immediately, and they arrived in minutes. They chased him for several blocks until they caught him." "Who was it?" I asked, although deep down I already suspected. "That Daniel guy," he replied. I was frozen for a few seconds. I felt a mixture of anger, relief, and even ironic laughter. The man who had spent weeks threatening me had had the nerve to try to carry it out with a can of paint. I hung up and got dressed immediately to go to the restaurant. When I arrived, the patrol car was still parked outside. I approached the officers and confirmed the story. Daniel had been caught literally with paint on his hands. He tried to run away, but he did not get very far. They caught him on a nearby street, agitated and out of his mind. The watchman told me that when he confronted him, Daniel was shouting incoherent things like, "This place is worthless," or "If he does not pay me, I will ruin his business." That was enough to make his intention clear. He was taken to the police station, and that same night, I had to show up to ratify the complaint. I already had the extortion case ongoing with the calls and messages, and now the attempted vandalism was added. In legal terms, that was practically the final blow against him. The following days were a storm. My lawyer kept me informed of every step. Daniel faced charges for extortion, threats, and attempted damages. Although the material damage did not actually happen, the fact that he was caught red-handed and with the spray can, added to the previous messages, left little room for doubt. Maria, of course, tried to contact me, not directly because I had already blocked her from everywhere, but through mutual acquaintances. She asked them to talk to me, to intercede, for me to withdraw the complaint. She said that Daniel did not deserve to go to jail, that he had acted out of desperation. Some of those acquaintances even hinted that maybe I was exaggerating and that it was best to let it go, but I did not give in. I had endured infidelity, humiliation, blackmail, and threats. It was enough. It was not up to me to forgive something that was clearly a crime. On the contrary, if I let all that go, the message I would be sending would be that anyone could come to intimidate me or put my work at risk without consequences. The process was fast because the evidence was overwhelming. Call records, message screenshots, the audio where they asked me for money and threatened me, and finally, the attempted vandalism with police intervention. Daniel was ultimately convicted. It was not a very long sentence, but enough for him to understand that life is not solved by living off others, and certainly not with violence. He would spend some time behind bars and would also have a criminal record. As for Maria, she was never directly charged because she had not carried out the threats or the vandalism. However, her moral complicity in the whole matter was clear. I had nothing more to say to her, and I left it at that. What did impress me was one last attempt of hers to appeal to my feelings. One night, I received a very long message from an unknown number. It was her. She said things like, "Do you not understand what it means for a woman to be left alone? I just wanted someone to support me. And if Daniel ends up in prison, I will sink with him too." It ended with a plea for me to reconsider everything. I read it only once and then deleted it. I did not reply. That person is no longer part of my life. And that is how it all ended. Today, looking back, I feel a huge relief. For months, I lived in a circle of manipulation where my generosity was used as a bargaining chip and my love was confused with obligation. I thought I was helping someone who needed me, when in reality, I was only feeding the comfort of two people incapable of taking care of themselves. The restaurant is still standing, stronger than ever. In fact, the news of what happened spread among my customers, and instead of driving people away, it brought me more support. Many congratulated me for not letting myself be intimidated. Some even told me that this firmness was the reason they admired my business, because it reflected my character. Personally, I learned that it is not all about giving. You have to know when to draw a line, because otherwise you end up empty, used, and even in danger. I also understood that not all people deserve your help, and that love does not justify sacrificing your dignity or your principles. Daniel paid the consequences of his actions. Maria, well, she chose her path. I chose mine, and although this experience left me with scars, it also left me with an invaluable lesson. What is built with effort and sweat is defended with your head held high, without fear and without giving in to blackmail. Today I can proudly say that I came out of this stronger. I have my restaurant, my peace, and, above all, the tranquility of having put an end to a story that should never have started that way. That was the closure. And, believe me, there is no better feeling than looking back and knowing that I did not fall into the hands of those who only wanted to take advantage.